Picture this. You're 27 years old and you're holding evidence that could destroy lives. Not your life, not yet. The lives of the men who did it, the officers who let it happen, the institution that will do anything to make sure no one ever knows. You haven't slept in 3 days. Your hands shake when you try to eat. You keep replaying what you saw over and over, like a film reel you can't turn off. Every time you close your eyes, you hear the sounds from that room, the voices pleading in Arabic, the casual laughter of the interrogators, the way silence falls when someone finally breaks. You could stay quiet. People do it all the time. You could finish your deployment, collect your honorable discharge, move on, forget. Thousands of soldiers have seen things they wish they hadn't. Most of them learn to live with it. They compartmentalize. They tell themselves it's war, that it's necessary, that they were just following orders. But you've already tried forgetting. It didn't work. So now you're standing at a threshold most of us will never face. The moment where doing the right thing means destroying your own life. This is the story of Alyssa Peterson, a young soldier who exposed a war crime. And this is what happened to her. Alyssa Peterson was 27 when she died. But in the machinery of war, she was still a child, idealistic, untested, utterly unprepared for what she was about to face. Born in Flagstaff, Arizona, Alyssa grew up in a place where the sky stretched forever and people still believed in honor. She was the kind of kid who did her homework early, who played the cello, who spoke fluent Arabic because she wanted to understand the world. She was earnest, the kind of person who thought if you worked hard and did the right thing, good things would follow. In 2003, she enlisted in the Army, not because she was poor or desperate. She enlisted because she believed in service. She believed in protecting people. She scored so highly on her language aptitude tests that they fast-tracked her into military intelligence. She was brilliant. They told her she'd be an interrogator, someone who could bridge cultures, who could talk to detainees and extract information without violence. She thought she'd be helping. By September of that year, she was deployed to Iraq, stationed at a forward operating base in Tal Afar. She arrived believing the mission was just. 3 weeks later, she was dead. But before that, before the ending most people never heard about, there was a moment, a choice, a refusal, and that's where this story really begins. Stories like this are rarely taught, the uncomfortable ones, the ones that make institutions look bad. If you value hearing the truth that was buried, consider subscribing to DarkPast. We tell the stories they want forgotten. Alyssa Peterson arrived in Iraq in late August 2003, fluent in Arabic and trained in interrogation techniques, techniques that according to military doctrine were supposed to follow the Geneva Conventions. But what she found at Tal Afar wasn't doctrine, it was something else. The facility was a converted building on the base, concrete walls, fluorescent lights, rooms with metal chairs bolted to the floor. Within days of her deployment, she was assigned to interrogate Iraqi detainees, men who had been rounded up in raids. Some were suspected insurgents, some were civilians caught in the wrong place. All of them were terrified. Alyssa walked into the interrogation facility expecting to do her job. What she saw instead was systematic abuse. Not the kind of abuse that makes headlines, not the photographs from Abu Ghraib that the world would see a year later. This was quieter, more routine. Sleep deprivation. Detainees kept awake for days at a time, subjected to constant light, constant noise, their bodies pushed past the breaking point. Stress positions. Forced to stand for hours, arms extended, muscles screaming until they collapsed. Extreme temperatures, sensory manipulation, degrading treatment designed to break men down without leaving marks. Alyssa was fluent in Arabic. She could hear what the detainees were saying. She could hear them beg. She could hear them break. And she was ordered to participate. Sit in the room, ask the questions, ignore the screaming. She tried, at first, to follow orders, but something inside her wouldn't let her. She kept thinking, this isn't why I'm here. This isn't what I signed up for. Some of the men were clearly innocent. Farmers, shopkeepers, men who had been in the wrong neighborhood when a raid happened. But the interrogators didn't care. The pressure was on to produce intelligence. She started refusing assignments, not loudly, not publicly, just quietly stepping back, saying she couldn't do it. Her commanding officers didn't appreciate that. Refusal in a war zone is not a minor infraction, it's insubordination. But Alyssa didn't stop refusing, because she knew that if she participated, if she sat in that room and asked those questions while men were tortured, she would become complicit. And she couldn't live with that. So she made a decision that most people in her position would never make. She reported it.
Imagine being 27 years old, thousands of miles from home, surrounded by people who have weapons and authority and the full weight of the United States military behind them. Now imagine telling them they're wrong. Not wrong in some abstract sense, wrong in a way that could end careers, wrong in a way that could lead to court-martials, to prison sentences, to consequences that make people disappear. That's what Alyssa Peterson did. She went to her superiors and reported what she had seen. She said the interrogation methods being used violated military law. She said she wouldn't participate. She thought, naively, heartbreakingly, that they would listen. They didn't. Instead, they did what institutions always do when someone threatens to expose them. They isolated her. Suddenly, she was the problem, not the torture, not the violations, her. She was reassigned, pulled from interrogation duties and put on gate guard, a humiliating demotion for someone with her skills. Gate guard is the lowest job you can give a military intelligence specialist. It's standing at the entrance to the base, checking IDs. It's a job for privates fresh out of basic training. For someone with Alyssa's skills, fluent in Arabic, trained in advanced interrogation, top of her class, it was a deliberate insult, a message. This is what happens when you don't play along. Her fellow soldiers started avoiding her. In a war zone, trust is everything. If you break rank, if you question orders, you become a liability. In the chow hall, seats near her stayed empty. In the common areas, conversations stopped when she walked in. She was 27 years old, and she was alone. Alone in a war zone, alone in a system that had turned against her. But she didn't recant, she didn't apologize, she didn't say, "I was wrong, I'll stay quiet." She stood by what she'd reported. Because for Alyssa Peterson, doing the right thing wasn't conditional, even when it cost her everything. If you believe silence protects the guilty, not the innocent, if you think truth matters even when it's dangerous, let this story be heard. Hit the like button. It tells YouTube to show this to people who need to see it. On September 15, 2003, less than 3 weeks after arriving in Iraq, Alyssa Peterson was found dead. The official report said she died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. She was the first female soldier to die in Iraq. But the circumstances of her death were buried. For years, her family didn't know the full story. The military told them she had struggled with the deployment, that she had been overwhelmed, that it was a tragic but isolated incident. They didn't mention the interrogation facility. They didn't mention the torture. They didn't mention that she had refused orders and reported abuse just days before she died. It wasn't until investigative journalists started digging, years later, that the truth began to surface. Kevin Seitz, a reporter who had been embedded with troops in Iraq, started hearing whispers about Alyssa Peterson. He filed Freedom of Information Act requests. He interviewed soldiers. He dug through documents. And he found something the military had buried. Alyssa Peterson had not simply struggled with deployment stress. She had refused to participate in interrogations. She had reported that the techniques being used violated military law. She had been reassigned and isolated as a result. And 3 weeks after arriving in Iraq, she was dead. The timeline became clear.
Late August 2003, Alyssa arrives in Iraq, assigned to interrogation duties. Early September 2003, Alyssa refuses to participate in interrogations, citing illegal techniques. September 6th through 10th, Alyssa files formal complaints. September 15th, Alyssa is found dead. There is no official acknowledgement that these events were connected. The Army's investigation concluded that Alyssa's death was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It was unrelated to her duties. But the timing forces an uncomfortable question, one the military has never answered. The investigation was closed within weeks. No prolonged inquiry, no accountability, just a death certificate and a burial. Her story could have ended there, forgotten, erased, another name on a long list of casualties. But some stories refuse to stay buried. Alyssa Peterson never got to go home. She never got to finish her service. She never got to use her Arabic to help people the way she dreamed. She never got to play the cello again or see the Arizona sky. She's buried in Flagstaff, in a grave that most people will never visit. Her parents spent years fighting for answers. They filed Freedom of Information Act requests. Most came back heavily redacted. The investigation files, sealed. The names of the officers she reported, withheld. What little leaked out came from journalists, not the military. Alyssa had reported multiple violations. She had named specific individuals. She had documented what she'd seen. All of it was buried within weeks of her death. The interrogation methods she reported, some of them became public a year later during the Abu Ghraib scandal. The world was horrified for a few weeks, then it moved on. The officers she reported, most were never charged, some were promoted. Alyssa Peterson paid the ultimate price for trying to do the right thing, and the institution she tried to hold accountable faced no consequences. That's the real cost of whistleblowing. Not just the isolation, not just the fear, it's what happens after. It's the way the person who spoke up gets erased, while the people who did wrong keep their careers, their reputations, their lives. Alyssa Peterson was 27 years old. She believed in honor, in service, in doing the right thing, and it destroyed her. There are some people who believe that whistleblowers are traitors, that speaking out against your own institution is the ultimate betrayal. But here's the question this story forces us to ask. If staying silent means letting war crimes continue, who are you really betraying? Alyssa Peterson made a choice that most of us will never have to make. She saw something wrong and she refused to let it continue. And whether her death was a direct result of that choice or simply the unbearable weight of knowing what she knew, the outcome is the same. She's gone, and the system she tried to expose is still here. So the question isn't whether she did the right thing. The question is, what are we willing to do to make sure her story isn't forgotten? If stories like hers disappear, others will suffer in silence. Share this video. Send it to someone who believes in accountability. Post it where people who care about truth will see it. Keep Alyssa Peterson's story alive. Because the moment we stop remembering people like Alyssa Peterson is the moment we guarantee there will be more of them. And next time, we might not even hear their names.